So I will say, welcome to the second hour of Mindshifters Radio. And today is Thursday, July the 31st, 2025. You hear a little boy in the background. I'll turn it over to Michael. Welcome, Cammie. Welcome, Susan.
Thank you, dear heart. Delighted that we get together again. Is that proper English? We get together again? Let's say that 10 times fast. Anyway, glad we're here. And I'm going to keep working toward doing the lesson from Course in Miracles on the idea of forgiveness. However, I would love to open to any conversations, thoughts, questions, answers. As a starting point, what's on your mind? And if you have a thought, push that button 1. It was actually a young lady that was supposed to be joining us today. Give me a second to just check and see.
If you're talking about Lucy, she just sent me a text and said, can you send me the Zoom link? So
okay.
Can you get that to her? I kind of have my hands full here.
Okay. So let me just get here. Complications. So excuse me while I just get this link to Lucy so that she can join us. She had some things she wanted to share. And so I'm just going through and sending her the link. At least I'll send it to her when I get to it in my lister. There it is. Okay. If you want to send her a note telling her I sent it, just so she can look in her texts. And other than that, what I'm going to do is share. Oh, there's Lucy. She's here. Well, welcome, young lady. Glad you're here. I was just sharing with people that you were going to be joining us and had some thoughts. So I was going to hold off getting into any topic until we got to say hello to you.
Hello,
So
Michael.
Well,
Hello.
hey, how are you, young lady?
I'm glad I figured it out, and now I see you send me. That's new. I thought I will see you. I thought like it's so awesome to actually speak face to face.
Aha.
Yeah, but you know. So I
So
do
how are
have
you? What's
questions.
exciting in your world?
Everything is well. I'm grateful for that. And
Awesome.
the questions what I have answers. Well, what I think, I don't have depth of knowledge. I think it should be something else to it, or maybe I'm overthinking that.
Well, let's see if I have anything I can add or
Yeah.
subtract.
Okay, thank you. So, when we're talking about codependence, of course, I understand that this is related, not just related, but pretty much denial, right? If I think if something or someone outside of me is the cause of how I feel. And in this context, I absolutely understand when I'm codependent with something or someone. But when
Right.
it comes
Including
to
self.
well, this part, that is my question. Can you speak, if it's
Okay.
possibly separately, about codependency with self?
Yes. In the Aramaic, the word neighbor in Aramaic means anybody that you think about. And if you remember, there's that that instruction that said, in order for you, and I would replace the word you being, to live, you, non-being self, has to die. The structure in the mind that we call self, that's based in the power person dynamic, but isn't self at all. The hostility and fear-based image of self. And so in Aramaic, that's your neighbor. You are your own neighbor. And so when you have received message from a power person and you accept those and you get into blame, negative self-talk, then you're not holding a space of love for your neighbor. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes.
And of course, the reason for that is because it is the active presence of love that is the master solvent for all trauma. When I recognize that if love is present, in the world, they call cycling information in the mind thinking. If I say, don't think about the color of your car, and then I ask, I've got a group of people, and I say, well, and so what are you thinking about? And, everybody raises their hand. Oh, I'm thinking blue or red or yellow or whatever. And the question to ask is that even thinking? Or is it just cycling information? We say the computer's thinking. Computers don't think, they cycle information. I'd offer that when things are moving in carbon-based memory, like a computer, we're just cycling information. And the truth is, if most people said what they thought, they'd be speechless. There's a physicist, David Bohm, who was a cohort of Albert Einstein. And his statement about thinking was that when most people say they're thinking, they're merely rearranging their prejudices. And so if cycling information isn't thinking, how do we define thinking? How do you get to the real thing? The best thing I've been able to come up with for thinking is that thinking is the ability to hold love, conscious, active, and present in your own mind if something less than love comes up. And the reason why someone who can do that is a genius is because when love is present, the source intelligence of the universe is present in us, and the active presence of that love dissolves all error, dissolves everything that never belonged in the system. So our errors begin to dissolve and we naturally become more intelligent looking, but it's not because we're cycling information better than anybody else. So that would be my take on it. Does that make sense?
Yes, and we'll see if I really grasped it. Maybe I have two things. So one of them is so while love is conscious, active, and present at the moment, based on what you said, that you see that as a thinking, but could it be just also recycling, also rehearsing recycling, but just different? Because if we are every thought that our ancestor ever thought, every emotion we ever felt, so there was probably plenty positive information also. So how do we know that it's our independent thinking? It's still just a guess, right?
Well, no, I think that there's a real distinction between experiencing yourself, discovering yourself as the active presence of love, and holding that love present in your physiology, as opposed to thinking nice thoughts about yourself from the past or complimentary thoughts. I'm not suggesting that. I'm suggesting, and unfortunately, most of the world has never, except in their very earliest days as a child, never experienced themselves as the presence of love because they've had built into them this false persona, the personality in the Aramaic or in the Greek language. It's a mask, and it's made up of all of the inherited and unresolved patterns, good, bad, and indifferent, from all the generations within us when it's whatever's resonated into activity becomes that self. One of the objectives of the work, to me, is to come to the point where we really truly experience ourselves in our physiology as the presence of love, not just nice thoughts or good thoughts or
Right, right.
complimentary thoughts.
So if I understood you correctly, and then that would resonate with me. So I know that I'm thinking when I have that distinct feeling in me, right? Like it's still, you know that in your physiology. Like when I do worksheets, let's say if I do when I do worksheets, and when is that worksheet? Maybe who knows what number it is, and I know that energy shifting. I know I know that in my physiology that it's already coming. I may like
Yes,
even stop everything and wait and see how energy goes. I mean, obviously I will complete a worksheet, but I know even if I drop right there, the process already going.
right.
So then I understand the difference between positive recycling and that. Well, that's awesome. That makes sense
And
and make feeling
and
for
one of the
me.
yeah, one of the best ways to recall that if it's not in common experience is, for you, just go back to the moment you first held Alina
I
and
cannot
tap
use
into.
that, Michael. I think I shared that. Well, maybe not. Unfortunately, I cannot use that. I would have to find because my program kicked in as soon as I saw her. My first emotion was worry if everything is all right. So I
Right.
cannot.
Okay.
It took me a long time, and I still periodically back and forth to actually distinct love from worry and all that sort of emotions. So but
Okay.
I understand what you're saying, and I will tell you that because I had already quite a few, like not too many, but not one or two, more than a handful instances when I had it in my body, when this energy shift going. I mean, I even
Into
don't
love.
know,
You're saying
into
it.
something awesome, which
Right. Okay. That's it.
we can label it love, we can label it whatever, but love
Right.
is good labeling.
Yeah.
But that was something. I will tell you that, like now as we're speaking, it seems like to me it felt like freedom,
Mm-hmm.
and felt like like something was dissolving in me, and I'm
The
dissolving into
master
something.
solvent. Yes.
Oh, that what
And
it was.
that's the false self
Uh-huh.
being dissolved by the true self, the active presence of love. So I'd offer you an assignment now, Ben. If you can't go back to Alina's birth and do that, then I'd invite you to go back to Alina's birth and forgive as to all that worry
What
so that
is
you can
it?
go back to the direct experience of who she is in that moment. Because it's still there.
Well, I will tell you, I'm about to cry because there's a lot, and I've done work around, all the parent remorses. It's like probably endless amount of work done but not in this angle. That's like I have goosebumps. That's absolutely awesome.
Mhm.
That, yeah, yes, yes. I share that with Elena. That's why I told her, do whatever it takes before you became a parent, because you totally have it in your bloodline,
Mhm.
just to forgive it.
Let that stuff loose. When my daughter was born, we we had a home birth, and she delivered into my hands. Her head delivered into my hands, and people say that a baby can't focus their eyes for the first several days. My daughter focused her eyes into my eyes, laser locked onto my eyes,
Oh,
and grinned at me. And it was the first time in my life that I experienced and understood what the Buddhists aim for with their meditations, and that is a state of no mind.
my.
I had no mind. I could not think a thought. She was actually born. I had a classroom. I lived in Atlanta at this time, and it was a Friday afternoon. there were people coming from several different parts of the country for a weekend workshop in my home. My classroom was actually there. And it was 3 o'clock in the afternoon when we realized that my wife was in labor. And at 3:40, Krista was born. We hadn't named her, but the energy of love and joy in the room, I mean, it just instantly came to both my wife and I that her name was Krista Joy.
Wow.
And literally at 3:40, she delivered. And at 7 o'clock, she's in my arm and I'm greeting people at the door to come to the class. You know, this was the day before cell phones. And I had people coming from South Florida, several different, there was no way to contact and say, oh, we're canceling the class. We just had a baby. And, you know, they looked at me like, what, are you serious? She was born 2.5 hours ago and you're greeting us at the door. It was, yeah. And I went down to teach and I couldn't think a thought. My mind was gone. And it was just the only description I've been able to come up with it for that experience was that my mind and my mouth were buttered. It was just direct transmission. I spoke, I taught, but there was no mind in the middle of it. And that went on for about 3 days for me. That was the first time I had that experience and realized what that presence of love is. And I think one of my conclusions from that was one of the reasons that they wait until we're adults to have babies is that we're ready to have a taste of that experience. Now, unfortunately, we live in a culture that says, well, Mom, you're supposed to be knocked out with drugs, and Dad, you're supposed to be out getting drunk and giving out cigars. So nobody's home for the birth of the child. But being home for the birth of that child, really, truly being there in that space. And I think that it's the first taste when we're born that the child gets of the different qualities of love of each person that we interact with. And my take is our birthright, it's almost like a nutrient. Our birthright is to experience every person we interact with, mom, dad, siblings, neighbors, has that presence of love, and it feeds and strengthens the being that we are. And that's without any intellectual interference. That's what the presence of love is.
You know, I've heard that, and every time I hear like first time that story, you know, that's your life, part of your life story, and it's so awesome every time, like first time, even listening, like even this vibration were coming out of you, it's like brings that feeling like in my heart and in my mind. So it's absolutely awesome. So I didn't get to experience that, unfortunately.
You haven't yet?
Haven't yet. Working on that, definitely.
You can still forgive as to those energies that interfere with it, and that experience is still available to you.
Awesome. Yeah, that's wonderful.
It's just, and at first, you know, this question of, you know, hold a newborn child and recall what it was like. One of the instructions we usually have to give, because that's for years been the opening question in, you know, the Why Is This Happening to Me Again workshop, and we've, you know, asked that question of thousands, tens of thousands of people all over the globe. And oftentimes we have to give the instruction of, wait a minute now, I don't want to know what you were feeling. I want you to tap into the essence of your child. And so I think if you can forgive as to that worry, let loose of that on another level, you'll have another experience with her.
Yeah. Okay, tap into essence of my child. Oh, that's awesome. It's wonderful. Whew, that's good.
Joining you in it. Breathing it in with you.
It's like, well, I guess all other questions no matter, right?
I hear that. And of course, then, you know, there's certainly to this work, there's a certain intellectual component, although oftentimes, or one of my favorite tongue-in-cheek lines, it really isn't tongue-in-cheek, is in order to heal, you got to be out of your mind. But once the mind asks the first question, until you can satisfy its questions, that thing's not going to shut up, and it's going to become the block. It's like the secrets aren't hidden in the mind, they're hidden by the mind. It's the activity of the mind that tends to override with all the emotions that go along with the thought disorders, that tends to override our ability to experience what the ancients called the still small voice, or that presence.
Well, and every time when I've had that, while I'm doing the work and had it experience of this energy shifting, and it's absolutely true. I cannot say a word, like I'm trying, and actually I hear how it's incohesive with what's going on in me, and something is coming and I know it's not coming, and it was like so strange, like no mind, like everything strange. And I hear also there is it sound like no sound in my head, but it has special sound, or maybe it's vibration, and that's very true. And first and what I would notice with me, maybe 3 times, especially at the beginning when it started happening, was definitely confusion. Well, it was such uncomfortable confusion. It's like worse than any other pretty uncomfortable emotions I've experienced. And then when that wall is going down, all of a sudden, this close to what you describe happening, but not quite that, just different. I don't know even if I'm explaining that, because
I got it.
I
I hear
don't
you.
think I can even I'm listening to what I'm saying. I'm like, why am I saying that? I mean, you cannot explain it, but
No,
you
there,
can experience that, right?
you can experience it. There are no words. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a great explanation in the Course of Miracles that says the truth can't be spoken in words.
Yeah.
There are no words. And, you think about when you've had an opening like that, when you've had a spiritual experience, and you turn around to somebody and you're all excited. Oh, I just had this happen. And when it happened, they say, well, tell me about it. Well, um, uh, it's like the words don't even, these little frequencies coming out of a sound box in my throat can't even start to approximate what that experience is. And over time, we start to teach our minds how to speak about it. And then I think we fall into the trap of making what our minds have figured out about it, we make that the experience. And now the mind rips us off the experience again. And that's why the forgiveness process is so important, to collapse that mind, to collapse it, to collapse it, to collapse it, until that sucker's out of the way.
Yeah.
I've been working for it's about 2 years ago now that I made the request of Ruka to remove perception from me, to take perception away, to take the mind away. And now, like in the mornings, I can, and I could never have even thought about doing this before, but I can just breathe an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours without experiencing mental activity. And in that space of being, in my experience is that's where understanding comes in. That's where we really get to experience the truth. And it comes with the opening that the breath makes, that dissolves forgives, literally removes the garbage that's in the genes and in the way of the experience of ourselves as who we are.
So do you feel that your request, like, okay, you made this request, you do that breathing, you feel you are there, but what I was gonna ask, do you feel it's already impact in your life, like your perception
Hugely.
is on you? Okay.
Yeah.
So it's
And,
actually happening.
one of the things my mind went through when I started to ask that was, well, if you don't have me, what are you going to do about it? How are you going to know? I've got all the information from the past. It's like, there is such a much bigger mind available to us if we're available to it, if we're ready to listen. There is literally, in Aramaic, the words that describe, or the title of the breath is Ruka Kudsha, a feminine elemental force in us that undoes the effects of our errors and teaches us the truth. And that doesn't come from our minds. It comes from that space of being able to get quiet and be still.
Yeah. So, but that's, of course, my active mind will want to know, like, when you're out of practice, I understand how get somewhere while you're in the middle of practice, but how does it work when you're in the middle of life? But you already notice changes there. That's huge. That's what I don't know yet. My perception is very active, but I never requested that. All I ask.
One other thought, if you'll hold that question, just one other thought, because it fits here. And I'm not remembering who it was that said it, but the task that he had, it was one of the famous authors, Wadsworth or somebody like that. But the task he put forward was to get your bloated nothingness out of the way.
I love it.
That's being able to get this, this windbag of generational claptrap to be quiet for a little while.
So it shows like I really need to change my request, because quite a while ago, a long time ago, and I've done it more than once, my request was actually to be able to perceive all the signs, like universe or creator always give us signs. The question is that whether we're able to perceive them, feel them or something. Or not. And I always wanted to be able to perceive that signs, but now I'm thinking I probably should change the word, maybe to feel them, because I sort of emphasize word perception, perceive.
Right.
So I need to kind of change. Well, that's great. I need to change that.
When we finish this conversation, when the show's over, I'll send you a link. One of the most important, and I think one of the most misunderstood lessons in A Course in Miracles is the lesson entitled, What is the World? And what it says is the world is false perception. It is born of error. It has not left its source. It will remain no longer than the thought that gave it birth is cherished. And it's talking about the constructs of the mind, that Harvard research that we've talked about. Here we are, we've got somebody hook up to electrodes, we're measuring brain cell firings, and in this time frame, about a 25th of a second, we can measure 10,000 brain cells firing. And they determined that in that same time frame, the max amount of data that went into the constructs of the mind was 9 bits of data. And another research project, they again had people hooked up to electrodes, and they have an event, and they measure the time it takes for the mind to construct that event. And they're saying that it's 200 to 500 thousandths of a second before the mind gives you its construct. So when we're living in those constructs, everything that comes from it is from the past. It's at least 200 thousandths of a second old. And, whether it's 200,000 years or 200 thousandths of a second, really doesn't matter. It's from the past. And if we're not in the present, then do we get the gift, the present? Or do we just keep living under the constructs of the past? Yeshua, there's a guy who comes to me and says, hey, man, I like this work. I'm going to come do this with you. But first I need to go bury my mother and my father. And, it wasn't that his mother and father had just died and he's going to go get a shovel and bury them. His obligation as a son in that culture is he's got to take care of his parents till they die and bury them. So he might be gone for 25 years. And Yeshua says, let the dead bury the dead. Let the blind lead the blind. If you're going to do this, now's the time to do it. Because if we're living in a reality that's at least 2/1000ths of a second old, when do we ever get to the truth?
Yeah.
And my take is that, to me, one of the superpowers of the forgiveness worksheet process is that recognizing that the thing that drives perception, that drives the mind, is our goals. And when you cancel it, the mind quits for at least a fraction of a second.
Yeah.
And in that fraction of a second is when we can get a taste. It's like a near life experience. The culture talks about near-death experiences. Oh, clinical death occurs, and all of a sudden people experience the light and love and all these wonderful things, and they get resuscitated, and they come back and go, wow, I just had a near-death experience. Well, actually, no. Up until that moment that clinical death occurred, you lived in a reality structure that was at least 2/1000ths of a second old your whole life long, and what just happened was that thing that's had you hypnotized collapsed, and you had a near life experience. You got to taste what your human life is, and thank God you brought it back and you remember it. You got it. Now can you keep it? The life story of Daniel Brinkley is in a film. You can actually watch it free on YouTube now, Saved by the Light, and it's powerful. He has this near life experience, then he has to go back and struggle with his own ego, and he has to work through all the traumas that he inflicted on other people.
That's actually amazing how many chances he was given by life.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
awesome. Not everyone is.
That's right. Yeah. It's not a very reliable way, or at least a way that
Right.
you want to have this experience is go get clinical death and see if you can get back. But
Exactly.
to me, each time one truly cancels a goal, and that structure collapses, that's like a miniature near life experience. We get to taste. There's something else happening here than this insane hostility and fear-based perceptual construct that keeps telling me, well, this is what life is about.
Yeah. So, which leads me to another question. I have quite
Go
few.
for it.
We'll see.
Good.
But I didn't interrupt you. Did you finish that part?
Say,
Or you
say it
was,
again.
did I interrupt you? You were saying
No.
something? No?
Oh,
Okay.
no, I'm complete.
Okay, so yes, with codependence, yeah, definitely. I mean, it cleared that for me. So about our goals. So I know exactly how it looks, how it feels when I successfully cancel my goals, and I do understand that you will tell me at least one of the answers will be 77.
I'm 70.
17. Yes, I understand. But what if something else you would tell me? Because, like let's say example, Elena, and let's say for Elena to be happy or healthy or something, I cancel those goals a lot of times, like a lot of times.
Right.
I never sincerely was able to cancel, and certain goals keeps reinstating. And then, so that's one part. I have second part. Let me ask you both parts of the question
Okay.
about goals, and then we'll see. So that's my first one. Like when goals keep reinstating, it's one. Second, I not able to cancel sincerely as much as I understand it's important. And third, let's say if I'm working like on my anger, right? Like someone resonated anger in me, and
Okay.
by doing this worksheet, like one or two, I mean, I'm not there yet. Yet I have to do number 7 to put this new loving goal, and I'm like, I cannot do sincerely any loving goal if I'm still pissed. So those
Right.
3 things, yeah, in goals.
So my offering would be to recognize, the world calls anger an emotion. Anger is not an emotion.
Mhm.
Anger is a drug. It's an internally produced anesthetic against pain. And so in that situation where that's such a challenge for you, I'd suggest you speak to you instruct your mind, you focus on the willingness to encounter and directly experience the pain without the use of that anesthetic. That you'll let that come up. And when you've allowed that to come forward and bring it to love and start to dissolve it, then you'll sincerely be able to bring in the context of that situation, Rachma will open in you and love will come into your being, and you will be able to live. And you might have to do this sometimes 10 times in a minute around some of the bigger issues, but more and more you'll be able to come from that space of active love. And when you get down to step 7 in the worksheet, I mean, you still may not like what that person's done. I mean, what that person did might be criminal, but you'll recognize that your hostility and your pain is your monkey, not theirs. They've got their own monkey. They did a criminal activity, and it might be appropriate for me to pick up the phone and call the police and have them picked up for it.
Yeah.
But I don't do that from that space of pain and trauma. I do that space from a space of connected love.
Right.
So I've not given up my human life to that. But as long as I've given up my human life to that, then the non-being self with its hostility or fear will say, well, it's stupid. I'm never going to send love in their direction. Well, why not? Because I'm not connected to it myself.
So mentally, I
can't
do want to do that, but I just can't. And I
want
even
to.
sometimes write it, but like I don't experience that. That's what I want to do. I
I
want to
understand. Yeah.
experience that. Yes, but I
You've
hear.
got to go. You've got to embrace and process through, forgive that pain before you'll fully, sincerely be able to do that step. Would be my take.
Okay. Okay, understand. So that, yeah, makes sense. Yes. So that's one part. So what about
Okay.
Miss Elena, for example, or someone who I cannot sincerely even also cancel this goal and it keeps reinstating and like how do you like maybe if you can share your example like how you tune inside so you would be able to do that when it comes to Genie or children or grandchildren, if something is up and it's like, I know I'm cancer. I know I have to collapse it. And it's just not canceling. And you just, and I've just done work and it's just keeps coming back.
Well, that's why we have this personal code commitment called my commitment. And if you look at the third paragraph, if you do what the first 2 paragraphs of the commitment say, then the third paragraph is going to be a requirement. And if you remember, it says, and if something less than love comes up, I'll hold this in my heart. I'll listen. Well, we each get to learn to speak, experience, and be responsible for our own realities. I'm here for and with you, keeping communication open and keeping love conscious, active, and present as we heal and celebrate life. And you don't say that once and it's a done deal. It's a practice. I mean, there's a huge piece of work in that paragraph. And, the commitment developed out of my teaching the Healing Through Relationships workshop. And an early insight for me, that workshop, when I first started teaching it, was healing your relationships, because I thought there was such a thing as a diseased relationship. And then when I had the insight that no, every relationship is a perfect creation, every relationship will perfectly reflect back to us what we need to deal with. So here's my personal code. Here's how I'm going to function. And if something less than love comes up, this is the practice I'm going to enter into. And when you realize that you're dealing with, especially, I suspect for you from the interactions and conversations we have, as with most people and with myself, you're the first one in your family system to have stepped on this and gone, okay, I'm taking on the whole genetic history and cleaning it up. And it's a practice. There's nobody that steps up and says it's done. And, I will not proclaim that I'm done either. And I've been at it for 55 or so years now. But the
Yeah,
practice is
practice.
what
So
is
here, what you're
necessary.
saying and that what makes sense to me, because like, yeah, I've been practicing worksheets and I do worksheets since regularly. Sometimes, and I work with Julie a lot, going through all the stuff. So for a couple of years straight, and
Awesome.
yeah. So that's where I was able to break actually the whole panic attack situation. And
Right. All right. Awesome.
yeah. So that's like
So that's the practice. And
that right, but absolutely. But what I'm saying, what I'm thinking, let's say, give me 1 second. So that's what I was gonna say. So even though I ask question about worksheet, and this exactly point in the worksheet, what I heard you saying, you were not even saying about that practice. You were talking about different type of practice, mentioning your commitment, right? So it means, okay, again,
it
something,
means I'm going to consciously, purposely connect to love and hold you in my heart, hold that space. I'm going to speak. You know, I have a very old membership card to the One World Universal Religion of blame, shame, suffering, and pain.
yeah.
And I don't want to give that card up. So it's a major practice to say, and I'm going to speak, experience, and be responsible for my own realities. Because I got a genetic history that says and can prove in spades that everything I'm feeling is all your fault. Because I'm a card carrying member of the One World Universal Religion of blame. So there's a major practice, right? When you realize that your mind, it's not just what's stored, in the database, like the computer aspect of what we might call the body's mind, but the mind includes literally, like if we took every huge Cray supercomputer, wired them all together to function as one, that would not approximate the storage capacity of one human form. And our minds include literally everything that's happened. It's just recently that they've revised the belief that 97% of our genes is junk. They call it junk DNA. We use 3%, the rest is junk. Well, we know it's not junk. It's literally our whole genetic history. So if something happened 20 generations ago, that energy is registered within the physiology of that ancestor. It's in my genes. And if it's never been reinforced or come up in 20 generations, and a circumstance arrives in my life that resonates that into activity, all of a sudden I'm right back in the reality of that ancestor 20 generations ago and what was going on in their minds. It's a huge practice to say, and I'm going to continue to hold love present, and I'm going to be responsible for this rather than, I have this ancestor from, if I could remember what my mind is formulating its reality of, I have this ancestor that knew for sure that that neighbor was to blame and killed them for it, and they knew for sure, and now I am that sure about it.
Yeah.
And I've got to give that up. I mean, when you start realizing that that's what we're working through,
Right. And
it's a pretty big task.
right, and make it like really applicable, like actually go like to my question, right? To your answer and my understanding. So even though the primary tool of your work, I'm just saying how it landed, okay? Even though the primary tool of this work is worksheet, even though
Yes.
always loved mind shifters and all that, which haven't done for a while. And so I could do worksheets till how you say cows come home?
Till the cows come home. Yep. From being down on the farm.
However, like for that reason, brought up and start talking about commitment, if I don't do this part, so I really can do worship till cows come home, and I won't
Yes.
achieve this result. Well, this is like very big part of that.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
even though it's like when you said that it's a soul kind of makes sense, it's kind of logical. But when I go and do my worksheets and I understand that's primary tool, I'm like, I mean, with a lot of successes,
Right.
yes, but like,
But it's not the only tool.
correct,
You know,
correct.
I've
But it's
I've
like,
got I've got wheels on my car, and the wheels are really important.
yeah,
But if I don't have a transmission, I'm not going far.
yeah.
And, the original tool that I worked with, the original development that this is all founded on, which is in my book, Why Is This Happening to Me Again, is the forgiveness process. But out of that came every other tool. Once we're starting to get forgiveness down, now, geez, I speak from a mind of denial, dissociation, and blame. So how am I going to correct that? Well, I'm using projection language. You made me mad. What if I shift my language into responsibility language? Oh, when you said that, my anger came up. Now my mind gets to show me information differently. So there's another tool, responsibility communication. There's the codependence worksheet. If I'm upset and enraged and in blame about what you did, and I recognize I'm in a codependent relationship, what is it that I did that I'm in blame and upset about? What's my darkness? Carl Jung, uh, brilliant statement. The best way to deal with the darkness of other people is to become acquainted with your own darkness. And so every tool, whether it's the codependence, whether it's the commitment, whether it's the still point breathing, every tool grew up out of that original worksheet work, but they're all complementary, and together they make a whole set of tools that empower us to move forward faster and more easily than the one tool alone.
Yes, and then when someone had that issue like I had with certain goals, or certain people and goals around them. So that's and doing the work, doing worksheets, and things are, even if they're moving forward, but not the way how everything else moving forward. So this is the first sign that I would need to incorporate other tools. So that's pretty much how it goes, right? In study. Yeah.
That would be my take, yes.
Yeah, yes. Well, it's really helpful because like I was a little confused, if you will. I'm like, why it's still there? Then I start analyzing, that likes to analyze. So maybe because it's not true goal. Well, maybe, but like, why true? If it's not true, why that keeps it reinstate? So I kind of start thinking too much, and I thought I'd rather sort it out with you.
Well, delighted to be here. Let me share I'm not even sure now, about a year and a half ago, I was doing a still point session, doing some of my own work. And as I was breathing, I'm laying down, my eyes are closed, and as I'm breathing, I was given the instruction to look downward. It was kind of like, I'm laying here looking, look downward. So I look downward. And what I see, quote unquote, is this vast field of darkness, like beyond any size of space I could imagine, this field of darkness. And in it were an uncountable number of small lights. So that's what I'm all of a sudden looking at as my eyes are closed and I'm looking downward. And so it's, what am I looking at? And what I was told was, this is the darkness that your ancestors are living in and carrying with them. And they're asking if you will help to process that load off of them. To which I instantly, and I usually, when I'm doing still point breathing, don't speak to myself out loud, but I spoke that out loud to myself when I was asked that question. Like, And joyfully, of course, yes, absolutely. And usually when I do still point breathing, my phone is off, but I hadn't turned my phone off. And literally, as those words came out of my mouth, my phone rang, and it's my son, Michael J. Now, my son, Michael J, has been circling the earth for about 42 or 43 years now. And we have never, up to that point, we had never had a conversation about our ancestry. He didn't, he didn't have a whole lot of involvement with my family. And so it was just never a conversation. But I had just agreed that I would help to process all of this. And the first words out of Michael J's mouth are, "Hey, Dad, I'm on Ancestry.com and I need some information about our ancestors."
Wow.
Talk about confirmation.
Wow. Oh, that's how it works?
So recognize that you're not just working for yourself. You're not just doing it yourself. There's another great line in the Course in Miracles says, "When you are healed, you are never healed alone."
Yeah.
And we're
Absolutely.
literally opening a space, not even just for the people who are in our particular bloodline when we do that work, but anyone who's locked into a similar energy or a similar issue. We're opening a space for them to heal.
Yeah.
And to me, doesn't get better than that.
Yeah. Awesome. Do we have the time for more questions or not?
Go for it. Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
okay. So now about punishment. Uh, how would I even ask? Like you've said it before, but there is something about if work is not around me, and sometimes it's very clear, but sometimes it's not clear at all, and I cannot find even place, even idea where there could be punishment for me, and why it has to be. Like, how do you see that? Like, why you came up with the idea that it has to be self-punishment there, if it's not even about us? Like, I mean, we're involved, of course, but like kind of, because I have some amount, I don't know, maybe it's 10% when I could never found self-punishment there.
I'm not sure quite what the question is.
So is it all, oh yeah, that's right, I didn't ask the question. So is it always have, is there always self-punishment? Like on the
Not
worksheet?
not necessarily,
Ah, okay.
but usually there's some form of punishment.
Okay. Well, if it's not necessarily, and I say about 10%, I don't know, I didn't calculate for sure. It's not happening for me, so that pretty much answered my question. So, okay. Is there anything else you can tell, or I can go to next question?
Go for it.
Okay, so I cannot remember where and when I heard you talking about complicated mind versus simple mind, and this is in relation to truth. Can you please talk about what you see as complicated versus simple, like to understand how it relates to truth, how in relation to truth?
I'm not getting the question.
So, do I remember correctly that you were talking about complicated mind?
Oh, okay, I got it. Yes, yes. There's a place in one of the workshops where I talk about that. Truth is complicated to a complicated mind. And when we remove the complexities from our mind, if we're trying to understand the truth and we've got all these complex intellectual things going on, then understanding the truth, what we call understanding truth, is going to look very complicated. But when we forgive, when we remove the complexities and simplify our mind, then the truth becomes pretty simple. You breathe, you connect with love, and that presence dissolves what doesn't belong.
So complicated, yeah.
If I
Just a
take
little more
somebody that's
about
an
complicated.
intellectual, I take somebody that's an intellectual giant, and I say those 10 words to them, and they're going to look at me like I'm nuts. 5 years from now, they're going to go, oh yeah, this is so simple. I breathe, and if they do their work and they remove all the blocks and all the complexities, then it simplifies it.
Okay, okay. Yeah, good. Well, then I understand. It makes sense because I remember you were talking, and I thought maybe there is some other quality of one type of mind versus another, but this is more like I understand.
No, I think no, it was more just when you take the avoidances and the complexities out of your mind, it just becomes simpler and simpler.
Okay, okay, good, good. Okay, but and what was one more thing? I listen. I on some radio show you explain about quantum healing. I don't think I understood difference between the breathing, what we did at intensive. So like I go to Urate to get she breathes
Right.
me, and you have now service which is quantum healing. I did not catch the difference. Like,
Well, there's some work that I was trained on very early in my medical training
mhm.
that is intensely physical, too intense to do in a regular intensive. And about a year and a half, or maybe it's 2 years ago now, there was a gentleman that we had connected with that had been doing this work. We'd met him, but had kind of picked up the work on his own, and he was going through some major trauma. And his mother actually had passed away, and he was traveling. He lived in Texas, and he was traveling up to the Northeast. And because he was in a lot of trauma, I suggested he come by and we'd do some still point work. And this was a man that he ultimately discovered that at about the age of 8 years, he had fallen off a bicycle on his face and busted up his teeth in his face. And from then on, had headaches pretty much every day the rest of his life. At the point where he came here, he'd retired from Delta Airlines, and he pretty much spent his retirement flying around the country from doctor to doctor to doctor because he was experiencing 2 to 3 level 7 headaches that lasted 24 to 36 hours per week. He grew up thinking everybody has headaches. That's just the way it is, right? That's what he believed. And so he's having 2 or 3 of these 24 to 36-hour headaches that are level 7. And along with that, tremendous amount of sinus pain. And so I pulled out some of the early work that I'd done, along with some of the latest energy field work and the still point breathing process, and did that work with him. It's something that I had not really worked with for 45 years or so, and integrating all of that. 2 weeks afterward, when he talked, he was down to one headache that lasted 3 to 4 hours, and it was a level 2 to 3, 4 headache.
Wow.
And now he's free of headaches. And so that was kind of an accident. He was coming through, and I said, "Let's breathe." And I was just guided to do that with him, and realized with the experience that I've had between 50 years ago when I first learned some of that work and now, and the new tools, the new energy field work and such that I was doing, that it was something that needed to be done on a one-on-one basis, and that it's something that we can't do for ourselves. And so
Okay.
we had stopped doing intensives at Heartland in 2019 with COVID and haven't started up again. So I've started to do one-on-one personal intensives that were 3 days to 5 days. And
Great.
that's called quantum still point,
Okay.
because
Okay.
it takes people just a quantum leap beyond what any other tool that I know of can do.
Well, it sounds awesome. Sounds like we need to plan it.
It's intense and it is
Oh,
awesome. Yes. As a
you
matter of
know.
fact, I did. There's actually a radio show where I talked about it, but I did to the degree that I could, a quantum still point session on myself,
Mm.
and had some awesome openings. I'll send you a link to that show. And there's actually a friend of mine who's a physician, somebody I've known for 50 years, that I had done an abbreviated one. The last time I was in Florida back a year or so ago, I did an abbreviated quantum still put on him, and 4 or 5 things that he'd been working on, all of a sudden he just had breakthroughs on. It's just like, oh my God, this has changed my life. And so I had set it up for him to come up and so I could train him. So I had somebody who could do a full session on me. And unfortunately, I mean, we got a fair ways along with it, but unfortunately, it just kind of cracked and wasn't ready to go to the next level. So I never did get that completely done. But
Uh,
but it puts me in a whole other space just to talk about it.
I hear. That's why I'm like sitting quiet.
Yeah, yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah,
It's
awesome.
like one of my I've been working since that first time, and I've done it now with, I don't know, 15 or 16 people. Been working to understand what the operative principle is, and I'm not sure yet. But I think the core of it is, if you can, the still point process takes people into processing work, but the mind's still going. And it's what I'm getting is like this thing that was called the mind-to-man carbon-based memory holds this structure in place, and we're used to it being the source of life, that it's what's telling us the truth. And so whatever's in there has to be processed through. And it seems that the common link is that in the quantum still point, the mind gives up for at least a time period, whether it's 30 seconds or a minute. And what I'm being told by the people who go through it is that it ends, when that happens, it ends their addiction to what's in carbon-based memory. The work's still there to be done, but when it gets resonated and pulled into activity, they're not addicted to it and get lost in it again for, another day, week, month, year, 10 years, whatever, that it's breaking that addiction. That's my best understanding at this point. And
Well,
I'm
this is
writing about it.
magnificent. This is
Yeah.
magnificent because I couldn't understand, like, if it stops for such a short period of time, then it starts again. And this is enough for mind to heal the addiction, huh?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. It's like, as long, my take, and this is just how I'm understanding at this point, I may be totally out in left field, but right now, as I'm understanding it, what happens is, as long as that carbon-based memory mind, that non-being self, remains intact and operative, hey, I'm holding on to my structure. Okay, you can take some of the garbage out, but I'm holding on. And there comes a point where the mind quits for even just the shortest period of time, and the structure's broken. It's all still there to be processed and dealt with, but the structure of it's broken, and that which holds it in place is broken, and so the addiction is no longer there.
How person understand if it's still there that is broken? Like, how
It's
then?
not. What happens is, like yesterday, something would trigger it, and they'd be going berserk, lost, boom.
Got it.
Today, something triggers it, and it's like, oh, well, here's another piece of my crap to work through.
Oh, got
Here's
it.
another one, rather than just being lost in and being taken over by it.
Well, that's huge. That's huge.
Yeah, it's huge.
So, and then with that, it kind of brought up another question. Well, obviously there are conscious thoughts, unconscious thoughts. When it comes to unconscious, Okay, no, from the beginning. So, like recently, yesterday, I experienced sadness, right? So, sadness, not new for me or anything. So, no thoughts, no conscious thoughts, no nothing like
Right.
that. It seems like, and it's not one time, it's not first time. It seems like my whole physiology, this like hormonal cocktail, chemical cocktail, kind of like boom, turn on. And I'm like looking around and I don't know what happened, nothing happening. And I have that sadness, and already having this sadness, all familiar thoughts start to, process like
Right.
that way. So does it mean
Can you
that
put your
this
finger
is
on a trigger?
addiction?
Can you put your finger on a trigger?
No,
Did
like
anything happen in the environment?
nothing happened. That's why and it happened before. That's why I've decided that either there are unconscious thoughts, which they are trigger, or not necessarily we always have a thought and then emotion. Sometimes this maybe body has addiction to certain cocktails and it has to hit or whatever. But that I knew years ago too. But now, because I'm in such a better state and so much work is done and more understanding of mind and everything, this is very clear to me. There is no outside trigger at that point.
What
And
about
boom,
something happening physiologically?
physiologically. Well, if it was, that could be, yes. Yet yesterday, nothing was. Like I evaluated everything. That's why I'm thinking maybe there is addiction like that. It's just we don't need a trigger, and body still can do that. Physiology just does it. Like hormonal cocktail kicks in because it
Hmm.
hasn't for a while. Is a
Right.
possibility,
And
and we can break that addiction.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Hormones are nothing more than thoughts. They're nothing more than the neuropeptides from thoughts. There's no such thing. When you get to the physics of it, Einstein, there's no such thing as matter. It's
Yeah.
energy. So if we have an energy pattern with that comes from a certain thought, we think a thought becomes a neuropeptide, lands on a cell, becomes chemistry in the cell, and we say that's chemistry. We say that's a hormone. But the hormone is nothing but a thought structure. And when I crack the thought structure, they say, oh, that young person, their hormones are just broken loose. Yeah, somebody's been talking about sex. And, yeah, that mind energy becomes activated. And yes, they get lost in it. But breaking that is no different than any other. It's all based in what's happening in the way of mind energy.
Right. Yeah. Yes. If there is no such a thing, so then it brings me back to unconscious thoughts.
Yes.
And then how do I deal with that? How do I even do worksheets around unconscious? We'll just go around sadness and then see what comes
Well,
up.
it might be around, your trigger might be not knowing. Gee, or it might be helplessness. Gee, I don't know what to do here. I'm helpless. This is just taking over. Okay, so what's my goal? I'd like to have some control here.
Definitely. That's a goal.
So that would be a place to start. And then of course, uh, there's always the breath. That's the major thing, the main thing that we can always rely on is the breath moving. And that whatever has been locked in tissue, if we'll allow the breath to go that deeply, it will unwind. And the mind doesn't even need to be involved in it. The mind was involved in putting it in place. But if we'll trust Ruka, trust the breath to go like, right down to the soles of the feet, then anything that doesn't belong in the system is going to begin to dissolve.
Thank you.
Breathing with you. There's a quote that I've been using recently that, just a second. Wait. Just a second. So Max Planck is a guy who got the Nobel Prize in physics for discovering the whole idea of quantum theory. And here's what he says. In all of my research, I've never come across matter. To me, the term matter implies a bundle of energy which is given form by an intelligent spirit. As a man who's devoted his whole life to the most clear-headed science, to the study of matter, I can tell you, as a result of my research about atoms, this much: there is no matter as such. All matter originates and exists only by virtue of a force which brings the particle of an atom to vibration and holds this most minute solar system of the atom together. We must assume behind this force the existence of a conscious and intelligent mind. This mind is a matrix of all matter. And it's the breath that determines what becomes solidified in the system and what becomes liberated from the system. So in the last analysis, you can always turn to the breath, would be my take.
I'm processing.
Got it?
Yeah, yeah. It's like my whole system, whole structure in the process now.
Cool.
Thank you so
Time to
much.
breathe.
Yeah.
All right. Well, holding the space.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
All right. Lots of love and blessings. Take care.